In physical sports like football or hockey, head injuries have become all too common. In the well-known 2015 film Concussion, Dr. Bennett Omalu's discovery of CTE in ex-football players that have passed away was absolutely stunning. I spoke to longtime NHL doctor David Mulder, who took the time recently to answer just a couple of questions on the topic of head injuries.
Well, it's the elephant in the room, clearly. And I think perhaps the reason there's so many concussions is that we document them better, we have better assessment of them. And then I think the other relates to the game, particularly hockey and football. Players are bigger. The NHL, they're probably 10 kilos heavier over the last 20 years. The game is faster, there's no red line, it's a collision sport played at a high rate of speed on an ice surface. Well, that's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. I think one of them is perhaps the current protective equipment renders the player more prone to severe head hits because they've got more courage with the equipment that they're wearing. And I think the other big thing that most players tell me about today is that perhaps the respect for each other has changed or has diminished. And again, I don't think we have a good answer, but we in the medical profession now, we talk about modifiers of concussion. We know that a concussion is different in a female, it's different in a young athlete, and of course it's different from virtually every instance depending on the mechanism and the severity. So it's a broad, it's a clinical spectrum, and it's like injury and anything else. It depends on severity. There's now some evidence from Toronto that perhaps there's a genetic influence. Perhaps there are some people who are more susceptible to concussions.
As seen earlier this quarter when I interviewed former NHL players Mike Brown and Brent Sopel, hits to the head have become prevalent in hockey.
So every athlete's going to struggle leaving whatever game that is, that they played. So, yeah, CTE, you hear that word, and you hear the concussions, and, I played, I retired, I think I was 38 years old, so my whole life, I started skating when I was 2, falling, getting hit in the boards. Am I going to have CTE? There's a very good chance. How many hits to the head, you fall off your bed as a kid, that's a hit to the head. So, where that's going to take me, in a number of years, I don't know.
Maybe 100. No, I don't know. I mean, the type of player I played, I hit hard. I could have concussed myself, just trying to run someone through the boards and clipping my head on their shoulder pad, or getting knocked out in a fight, whatever it was. But those are things you bounce back from. So no, I don't really know the number. I don't know how many it would be.
After speaking with a couple parents about their attitudes towards these sports, it became clear that allowing their children to play them has become a tough decision. According to Lori Lukash, this is a serious matter that requires a lot of thought.
That's a tough call. I would probably want to make sure that they had the most updated equipment, and I probably would definitely be going to every game and observing. And if I observed kids that were being putting at risk, I certainly would be involved of, following up and challenging it. To totally not have them participate if the kid really wants to do this, that would, I think I would, like I said, take every precaution available, as well as be there observing and making sure not only for my child, but other children that are participating, and maybe their parents aren't there, looking out for them as well.
Carolyn David's son played hockey for nearly 15 years, and she was always very concerned about concussions.
As a mother of a former hockey player, it was always in the back of my mind that he could get a concussion, but I had to let that go because my son was so passionate about the sport, and I didn't want to take that away from him. So I decided that it was more important to let him play, and I just prayed that he would be okay. And I was one of the fortunate mothers that my son played for many years and was fortunate enough to never had a concussion.